And we need to collaborate. We need to partner with each other. And we really need to encourage conversation rather than stifling it.
Welcome to the Passive House Podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered, and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House Podcast. Welcome back to the Passive House Podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh, coming to you from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland in New Zealand.
And I'm Zack Semke, coming to you from Seattle, Washington.
How are you going, Zack?
I am doing well. Today is an exciting day because our middle child just landed his first keeper salmon out on the water today. In fact, he caught 3, so we're going to have salmon dinner tonight.
Nice. Well, you're looking very summery. Looking like it's pretty nice out at the moment.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
We're down to single digit temperatures here in Auckland at the moment. It's been a little bit cold, but I have been enjoying some snow in the last couple of weeks, which has been very nice. Not a huge amount of it around, but there was a bit that I managed to find off the back of a Passive House event. Actually, I was down in the South Island and travelled down to a very nice part of the world in the middle of the South Island to enjoy a couple of days of skiing and snowboarding, which was very cool.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Well, we're going to jump into pretty much straight into interview this week. We've got it's a great interview that you had a chat with Michael Quast a couple of weeks ago now, after he had fairly recently jumped on board with the Passive House Canada. Really great conversation. So really good stuff to get into there because of, we'll talk about why afterwards. But before we do that, we've got a few people to thank.
Yeah, absolutely. So a big thank you to 475 High Performance Building Supply for being our sponsor of the week and making everything happen for us this week here at Passive House Accelerator. Also, thank you to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Thanks to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Ingui Architecture, Partel, Rockwell North America, and Zola Windows. And thank you to our champion sponsors, Buizo, Cascadia Windows and Doors, European Architectural Supply, Facro, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, LG Air Conditioning Technologies, and Source 2050.
Awesome. All right. Well, as I mentioned, Michael Quast came on board Passive House Canada earlier this year, around April, May, I think. Comes from he's got some experience, which he explains with you, Zack, but not directly from Passive House world, which I think is really useful. And he talks a little bit about why that is. So let's jump into it. This is your conversation, Zack, with Michael Quast.
So I am excited to have Michael Quast here, who is the CEO of Passive House Canada, the brand new CEO of Passive House Canada, one of the most important Passive House institutions in North America, and has been a driver of a lot of really exciting developments and change in Canada that we look at with some envy here south of the border, especially these days. And so I'm just delighted to have you here, Michael. Thanks for joining me.
Thrilled to be here, Zack. Thank you.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
was a very generous introduction as well. Thank you.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's such an important role, and this is our first time meeting, so I'm delighted to have this opportunity. I know that you probably have a lot on your plate these days. Could we start by just having you kind of share your background? I know you have a really interesting background in business development and communications and marketing
Mhm.
in the construction space. I'd love to hear more about that, and then kind of how that brought you to Passive House and Passive House Canada in particular.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I've been characterizing this as sort of a unicorn role for me because it connects my professional experience with deep-rooted passion for sustainable construction. So, uh, on the professional side, so yeah, I've got about 25 years of leadership experience in different industries, a lot of it in the construction space, and a lot of that in the residential construction space. I've got experience selling service and product into the AEC industry, but I also have lots of experience in television production, for example,
Oh,
and
cool.
manufacturing. So that allows me to have different functional expertise as well, which is really good when you're working with a not-for-profit. I have that experience as well. But I tend to wear a lot of different hats, as most of us in the not-for-profit space do. So I've got experience with communications, as you said, marketing, business development, operations. Uh, but all of that gets connected with a long-standing interest and commitment to sustainable construction. So I guess the highlight there is that about 20 years ago, Zach, my wife and I, we built the first straw bale house in the city that I live in. And we still live in that house, and we grew, raised our kids in this house. And it's not a passive house, but it is absolutely environmentally focused and sustainable. I was listening just before this uh, to the podcast that was done with ACE, talking
Yeah.
about straw bale panelization. You mentioned Chris Magwood in that interview, and Chris Magwood actually started me on that journey towards straw bale construction. I took a workshop of his when we were all much younger than we are now. And that really fired my imagination, and that led me into straw bale construction. But I like to say that building is in my DNA. My father was a civil engineer by profession, but he was also a bricklayer. My uncle was an architect. My grandfather was a home builder. I've done a lot of extensive renovations on homes, flipped houses with my dad for a while, worked on a television series called Homes on Homes with a contractor by the name of Mike Holmes. And we rescued homeowners from unscrupulous contractors. I've been in the regulation space, and the new home warranty space in Ontario, the province of Ontario in Canada. So I've seen residential construction from a number of different lenses, both from the builder side and also the consumer side, and bring that expertise and passion to the table as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So as you're looking at Passive House Canada and the and that experience that you're bringing to this new role, how do you see that contributing to what Passive House Canada needs and where the organization is going, and yeah, what are you hoping to chart there?
Yeah, well, so I don't even know what week this is. I think it's week 12, so it's
Yeah,
still early
right.
on. I'm drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah, you were just
I
at the
love it.
The first Passive House Canada conference 2 weeks into your
Yes,
tenure. I
exactly
read on
right.
your
Yeah,
LinkedIn. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, it was pretty intense, but lots of
Yeah.
fun. I'm meeting incredibly passionate, smart people, which I love. The team, while we're small, mighty but small, and really enjoying my time with them. The board's super engaged. Um, so it's really been 12 weeks of meeting people and developing relationships, or starting to develop relationships. So I don't know that I can say I have a clear vision of where Passive House Canada should be going. I know that we've done a lot of work, and our focus is primarily on education and advocacy here in Canada for the Passive House standard. The one thing that I will say is, and I've been saying this a lot for the last 12 weeks, is that um, before I came to Passive House, I didn't know a whole lot about Passive House, if I'm 100% honest. And I find that that's an opportunity. I feel that, this is a space that is populated by really well-meaning, super bright people who tend to talk to themselves. And we do it really well and with, great intention, but I'm not sure that we're doing the best job connecting with the larger citizenry, in our communities, in our provinces or states, or the country. And I think there's an opportunity to talk about, a better built building, whether it's a home or an office tower, or whatever it is, so that we're engaging people who might not otherwise touch on that. I mean, some of the buzzwords they hear, net zero, they understand, embodied carbon, perhaps to some extent.
Yeah.
But I think one of my focuses is saying to the community at large, we are all to some extent governed by different North Stars. And for us at Passive House Canada, it's obviously the Passive House North Star. And we think that, it's an awesome standard and people should be following that standard. But I don't think and I'm not saying that this absolutely exclusively has been the case, but I think that we tend to operate in silos in this sort of environmental space. And I think it's really important to build a bigger tent. And so I see an opportunity for Passive House Canada not to change its North Star or to mitigate that North Star, but to still celebrate people who are doing better than minimum code, for example. So if they're building, 20%, 30%, 50% better than that is great. It's not as good as Passive House. We think that's sort of the 100%. That should be the target that you're driving towards. But it doesn't mean that our conversations with those like-minded people, groups, associations have to stop or, preclude partnerships or relationships that help drive a larger conversation, again, with the larger populace. Like, that's so important. And I've learned that from my time in television production. Like, if you want to be a successful television producer, you need lots of people watching your show. That means that there's, good advertising. It means the network's happy, it means that you're engaging with the community. And so, to draw that analogy in a really crude way, I see Passive House Canada as an awesome television series, and I want lots of people to watch this show. So I want to engage them in different ways.
Right. That's perfect. And I couldn't agree more with that notion that we need to be looking at this idea that we have different North Stars. And I think that that's true not just for, say, the ambition of how far people are going down the road of quote unquote sustainability, but also the focus. So we, with Passive House, we have this really strong energy efficiency focus, but it's also clear that to decarbonize buildings, we also need to be, as you mentioned, dealing with embodied carbon and looking at electrification and connecting that with the clean energy transition. So there are all these different elements of decarbonization of buildings that I think I agree can be siloed. So I think it's exciting that you are recognizing that, and I think I just could not agree more that we need to be looking at how all these different elements come together. And again, I think that there is there can be a mistake when you're in a silo, which is to really be advocating for your thing to the expense of others, and it sets up this rhetoric between the silos that is not useful or helpful or really accurate, because really these things go hand in hand. They're not there. I mean, certainly there are some places where there might be little trade-offs, but ultimately there's just so much harmony between them in ways that they can support one another. Like, we can do low embodied carbon buildings that are also are highly energy efficient.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I agree with you. This idea that you're either with us or you're against us doesn't serve us.
yeah,
And so we need to be mindful of that. And everyone, they arrive at this sustainability in different ways. The consumer, the homeowner, the builder, the condo owner, the renter, the office owner, the business owner, like whoever is occupying the space that we're building for, they will come to it in different ways and for different reasons. Um, one of the one of the things that I found really interesting when we were building our straw bale house about 20 years ago, it's not a load bearing straw bale house. I mean, it was hard enough to get the code officials where I live to agree to let us to do a straw bale house. It was the first one.
yeah.
So it's not load bearing. It's basically a post and beam with straw infill. But it's straw. Like it's like, if you look at the pictures, the photos, it's like you got some post and beam and then all the voids are straw. And people were walking by the house going, what are you doing? But I would still have people come to the house and they go, yeah, but it's not load bearing. And it was like, yeah, but it's straw. Like, like literally, it came from a farmer's field. I can prove it. And so, I understand some people are purists and they want to be very pedantic about, whatever North Star they're following. But I don't know that we are not large enough as
Right,
collective groups to, I think, to be taking that kind of position. And we need to collaborate. We need to partner with each other. And we really need to encourage conversation rather than stifling it. And, if had I been perhaps less confident, or I'm sure there's lots of other words that other people might use, but had I been less confident, Zach, when I was building that straw house and someone had said, yeah, but it's not load bearing, I might have gone, well, okay, well, maybe I won't build it after all.
Yeah, right, right.
So sometimes you never know what it is that's going to discourage somebody. So you need to be very mindful that you are inclusive and you're
Yeah, yeah,
supporting people who are at different stages and at different points of that sort of environmental sustainable journey.
yeah. No, that's well said. And I think that it's a little bit of an occupational hazard because, I mean, not to generalize, but we are a community of kind of geeks,
Yes.
energy geeks, and we're thinking about how to optimize systems and buildings and things. So there's always something. So I think that there is this natural, and it's actually a really wonderful thing about this community. There's this natural tendency to be looking for, okay, well, what could be better? What's the next thing? But the flip side of that, of course, is that you could, it could come across as, yeah, dude, it's not load bearing. What's the point?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is
Yeah.
missing
That's a
the
good point.
point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is a good point. Sometimes you get, when you're inward looking in the community, you're trying to troubleshoot or problem solve very specific problems, and obviously people have very specific experiences, right? And they go, no, you can't do that. This is the way you need to do it. And again, another experience from my straw bale construction. We were right at a point 20 years ago when we were starting to build where the thinking around what the wall assembly looked like was starting to change. And just before we got the shovel in the ground, the thinking had been for a few years that you need to put rebar reinforcement into your footings that go all the way up so that the straw basically, it's like a marshmallow on a skewer and it
Right.
basically gets skewered onto the rebar.
Mhm.
And the thinking was that somehow makes the wall assembly stronger and more secure. What they discovered really quickly was that it actually promotes rot inside the wall assembly really quickly. And so,
Right.
the community goes, well, no, wait, that's not a good idea after all. So undoubtedly there were conversations, and I was part of them. It's like, do you do the straw, the rebar in the wall, the retaining wall, or do you not do it. And so we thought, well, we're not going to do it because the science
Hmm.
suggests that that's a really bad idea. But
Yeah,
those are the
yeah,
kinds of conversations that you have internally that, the passerby goes, yeah, whatever. I'm
yeah,
still
right.
having a straw and I'm not interested, or that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that your sensibility around moving beyond the silos is something that's also in line with what I see evolving with practitioners too. Like I think that I mean I mentioned this occupational hazard and generalizing about maybe some geekdom in our community, but the reality is that I think that people are definitely moving beyond silos in their own practice. And so I
Yes.
think it's wise for our institutions to also be doing, to be doing the same thing. So I think, yeah, I think that is a smart and timely kind of evolution.
Yeah.
Not to say, to imply that Pass Pass Canada was different in the past around that, but I think that that's an important kind of sensibility to bring to your
Yeah. No, I think
role.
that's an
Yeah,
excellent observation. And
yeah,
yeah, so that is certainly a focus that I have as I am talking to individuals and organizations and thinking about how can we help promote, in a very general sense, this conversation around environmental sustainable construction, which doesn't matter where you're looking in the world, there's a need for that, and still not, when your name is Passive House Canada, it's pretty clear what your
yeah.
North Star is, and so you can't
Hmm.
abandon that. You are committed to that, and you believe in that. And if you can have a long enough conversation with someone, you try to convince them of that. But the first part of that conversation is let's work together.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So my kind of uh, I guess relationship is, I mean, I've been an admirer of the work of Passive House Canada and the Canadian Passive House community for a long time,
Yeah.
and it really so I've entered this world of Passive House about 15 years ago, and just a couple of years into it became aware of the um, progress going on in Vancouver, BC. I'm based in Seattle. At the time, I was down in Portland. We were looking north of the border and seeing the policy changes that were happening in the city of Vancouver, um, um, basically incentivizing passive house in different ways, and then how that the success of that effort then laid the groundwork for the step code change or policies in the province of British Columbia with the five levels culminating at Passive House, which is I know has evolved and changed a little bit. But this notion that we're going to send a market signal showing where code is moving and provide steps along the way to help facilitate market transformation. And then I know that is those examples have had some impact in Toronto and elsewhere in the country. And I know there's been work at the federal level or the national level. Um,
You are so well informed, Zach. I'm
oh,
impressed.
oh,
No, seriously,
so
that's
that
that's awesome. Well done.
so I mean, the only reason is that for being informed is that we have not been able to necessarily enact the same kind of change in my home state the state of Washington. We have a great energy code,
Mhm.
and it actually has been informed by Passive House in kind of a stealth, subtle way. Um, but I've just been looking at with admiration kind of at this model, and we're not the only ones. I mean, I think that you can point to the progress in the state of Massachusetts and I'm
Yeah.
sure draw a line to that narrative I just kind of related.
Yeah.
So I know things are like where are things now, I guess, in like I know that I think there was my understanding there's just some movement from a past spouse's person's perspective of maybe a little bit backwards on that fifth step of the step code because it isn't my understanding is it's no longer passive house as being the thing.
Yeah.
But where do you see policy change an important piece of the work that you're going to be doing at Passive House Canada, I guess is one question. And then if so, where is the rubber hitting the road, or where are the places where are the levers that you are wanting to pull? And this is a little bit unfair because you're still in a role, but like, what are you seeing so far?
Yeah. So not unfair, but I won't have a fully baked answer for you yet. I can tell you that code change adoption is still a priority for us, obviously. My experience, even going back when I was working with the Homes Group and we were helping people, we were working with different levels of government. We did some development projects as well in Western Canada. And one thing that I learned there, and also from other sources, is that changing code is that you're pushing a big stone up a hill,
Mm.
and sometimes when you think you're almost at the top, you're not, and or it starts rolling over
It's
you.
a little Sisyphus
Yeah,
going on.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that is absolutely important. You need to keep doing that work. The STEP code in BC has done a lot for not just passive house, but for building better in the province. And it really has shone a light on how legislation can change attitudes really quickly so that you're gaining adoption.
Mhm.
So for sure, that remains a priority. There are shifting sands right now, I think, in the country. And I think part of that is just what's happening generally in your country.
Yeah.
And that has an impact here as well. I think there's a real economic conversation that's happening around priorities and shifting priorities, which is causing politicians and officials, code officials, to perhaps soften on some of their positions because they're
Mm.
getting pressure from different industries and different sectors that are genuinely concerned about the future. And I read, frankly, a startling article just yesterday about the state of condo development in Canada, primarily in Toronto and Vancouver, for example. That's what was being quoted. And it's a brutal time to be, a condo developer right now, or
Mm.
to be sitting on a finished condo and you're looking for people to move into it.
Yeah.
Super challenging. So, construction is a hard space if you're paying the money to actually have the building built. Super low margins and high risk all the way around. And when you're being pressured by other challenges, development costs, et cetera, sometimes your priorities shift. So I see some real challenges. And for that, I think it's really important that we as an organization, and again, as a collective, that we really continue to put pressure not only on the politicians, but encourage the builders and the would-be operators of these buildings to be thinking about the future and not just right now. So um, I, these are not new challenges, Zach, but I
Hmm.
think that they're highlighted right now in a very unique way. Certainly, from my vantage point, and especially in large areas like Toronto and Vancouver. Um, so for me, the focus is really trying to make people understand that building better means that it doesn't have to cost more,
Yeah.
and that the operational ROI on having that better building, performance building, is so big that you'd be crazy to turn it down. And I I don't know that we, and I would love to get feedback from listeners on this, but my sense,
Hmm.
Zach, is that, and again, it goes back to talking to ourselves a little bit. I think that the designers, the engineers, the geeks, as you call them, we talk to ourselves really well. I don't know that we've done a great job talking to the construction community per se, the builders and the developers, and I don't know that we've shown them the clear ROI that they get if they invest their money slightly differently, that it's not going to, the construction time isn't going to increase, the costs aren't going to increase. You can mitigate that if you get conversations with your teams happening early on. And then the big piece is the operation. And a lot of builders are looking to be the operators. They're looking to continue owning the building and then operating that building afterwards. And I think there is a conversation that we need to have. And that goes back to that sense of that general citizenry conversation point that I made earlier. The one big piece that I feel is missing a lot is that we're not connecting really well with consumers, like just the raw consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this from my own personal experience when I was at the Homes Group and we were trying to change people's thinking. Like, that series, which was 100% authentic, that was reality television when reality still meant something.
It was real.
Yeah. But we would be talking to homeowners who, ultimately are more interested in the crown molding or the granite countertops in their house, and less interested in, the high performance windows or the air tightness of the building or the HVAC and how the air is circulating. When I was building the straw bale house, that mattered. Like the air quality inside the house was one of the selling features of a straw bale construction for me, because I wasn't walking into a plastic bag per se. And the whole HRV HVAC thing was all brand new at that point. And we didn't really understand how we were going to replenish the air quality inside. Yeah. So I think one of the challenges that we have and that I would like to address is talking in a more plain language way about the benefits to the consumer and helping them understand. They get a lot of green talk about, what's your emissions, go do an electric car, do this and recycle your garbage. And I think they get piles on to a point where they become numb to it. And the reality is, they've got two kids in the back seat who are screaming, and they're driving to school, and they've got to deal with this, and they got to go to the job, and they got to get, how they get there is less important than they get there on time. And so they have real world challenges that are sometimes divorced from what we are talking about in the passive house community. And what I would like to do is to try to connect the conversations that we have, ultimately the objectives that we're trying to accomplish and the reasons why we are in this space, in a more plain spoken way so that they understand it and they buy into it. And if they want those buildings more readily, then the builders will want to build them more readily because they'll have a demand for it. And then they'll have those conversations more readily with the designers and the architects and the energy modelers and all the other consultants that they need on a project. And you'll end up with a more holistic ecosystem of stakeholders who are really focused on the future. And they're less focused on, I need granite countertops right now, or I need to sell this, or a 2-car garage on a house is what sells the house. That's a whole other rabbit hole. I hate garages, but I'm
with you.
I'm sort of drifting here a little bit, but my sense is that the conversation, while it's with code officials, while it's talking about code and making sure that that is looked after, and we talk about our, internally around the problems that we're trying, the technical problems that we're trying to overcome, we need to be mindful of who's actually building these buildings and who's actually living, working, and playing in these buildings. And sometimes I think we've forgotten those people, or we haven't carried them along quite as readily as we need to.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. I mean, I think and just like what we're going through, and we don't need to talk politics, but what we're going through politically right now is a reminder of there's an important relationship between policy change and cultural change, and there's because there's the ratcheting effect, and we need to make sure that we don't get too far over our skis on policy change and risk backlash. And There's so this idea that of reaching the consumers and building support essentially, or demand for better buildings, I think is really timely. And I think it is. You're right. I mean, it's not something that we as a I mean, I think that there are practitioners who are really focused on communicating with consumers. I mean,
Mhm.
Michael Ingui, who, if you haven't met him already, we need to make sure you guys meet, is the founder of Passive House Accelerator. He's a practitioner, an architect in Brooklyn,
Mhm.
and Manhattan, who does retrofits all the time. And so his focus in communicating about passive houses is to not really ever say passive house, or to kind of mention it as this sort of mysterious thing. So it'd be like, well, I don't know if you want to, have this remodeled house be free of bugs and dust.
Yes.
We could make it airtight, kind of like a passive house. Or if you want fresh air in your, continue fresh air and good indoor air quality, we can do one of these, energy recovery ventilation things, or fresh air machines, or whatever you want to call it, kind of like a
Yeah.
passive house. And
Yeah.
so it's that sort of like
100%.
really
That is
focusing on the
100%.
results.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Um, but I think that maybe as institutions, we've been maybe less focused on that, or maybe it's just it's going to be always something that where you have limited resources and time and talent to focus in different places, and you make some policy gains, and it's time to really focus on the marketing and communications piece now, because we've been less focused on that recently.
Well, I think sometimes though we take it for granted though too. Like we take for
Mm,
granted that the audience that we're talking to understands what we're talking about. So your point about what
hmm.
Michael said, who I've not met him, I'd like to meet him, I've read about him, but
Yeah,
that kind of language is absolutely appropriate because it's not it includes the individuals that may not have the vernacular that you want them to have, or they don't have the background or the understanding, or I think sometimes we just think that the science is so proven for ourselves that well, how could you possibly think of anything else? Like, why would you want anything else other than a passive house building? Like, really? Like, there's like, if I give you these 5 examples, that's not enough for you. And
right.
the reality is that, especially on the consumer side, and I know this, I worked at Terrion, which is well, it's changed a little bit. At the time, it was both the regulator for new home builders in the province of Ontario. It was also the guarantor for the warranty on new homes, which was up to 7 years, still is. And so we had like 365,000 new homes in the program. We had, I think, under 10,000 builders in the province. And um, most of our role was about, trying to mitigate disputes between the two parties, which can sometimes be heated and sometimes be, really civil. But it was amazing to me sometimes, because I have this background in construction, that when you're talking to consumers, the homeowner, their knowledge of the home is not always very sophisticated at all. Like
Yeah, yeah.
like they don't understand how the home works necessarily. It's not their job. And the other thing, Zach, and I drive this home too, is that there's been a shift in the way that people look at houses. And we're talking about houses specifically right now, but in the residential space, I think consumers look at houses as a commodity product in a way that they never used to. And
Mm,
when they see it as a commodity, they see it as something they're going to live in for a couple of years. If there's problems with it, if the windows aren't as good, or it's,
yeah,
the wind's
yeah,
blowing through, the door, they get less concerned about that because they're thinking that they're going to upscale or move into another home in a few years.
hmm,
And I think that sense of how transient the space can be sometimes has
hmm.
played on their understanding of the importance of the space that they live in and how important it is to their health, and also how important it is to the environment. And I think
Yeah.
that's sort of an area of opportunity for us.
I think that's a great point. So what would be the response to that that challenge? Because I mean, what you're describing is almost like a there's also a similar challenge with developers who don't hold the building, but build and
Yeah.
then sell. So
I think it's driving home the base. Well, I would start the conversation at driving home the understanding that the building is worth more if it's a better building. If it's
hmm
costing less to operate,
yeah,
and it provides a better experience for the people who live, work, or play there. It's likely to get rented or sold faster. People are going to get less concerned about that. The repair costs are going to be less frequent, perhaps.
hmm
And if you're talking about retrofitting on a larger building, for example, if it's into a tower, that's probably going to get pushed out further as well. So there, if you're not actually operating or owning the building for a long time, there's still value there. Like, it's not like driving a
yeah,
car off a lot and suddenly it plummets in
right, right,
value just because
yeah,
you've driven off the lot, right?
yeah,
It's more like you've driven an antique off the lot and it
hmm
still has
hmm
its value.
yeah, yeah,
So I think it's part of that.
hmm hmm
But sometimes I think that we just assume that everybody sort of has the same base level of understanding of performance and building science
yeah,
and
yeah.
the value of building better when they in fact they don't.
Yeah.
And
This,
yeah.
yeah, I think you're so right. And it harkens back to p- this when I was first, getting involved in this world, Brussels was the big superstar of Passive House. And so the Brussels region back, I think in like 2005 or something, started on this journey that culminated in 2015 when in the Brussels region the building code essentially became Passive House. But it started with experimenting with Passive House in public buildings. So that was one element of it. Another element of it was a really robust public education campaign.
Mhm.
So which actually resulted in the Icebox Challenge that has become so popular. But it was
Yeah.
more than the Icebox Challenge. It was also like all sorts of uh, basically it was a big advertising campaign on bus stops and everywhere that was very creative and funny and lighthearted
Yeah.
about Passive House, because the hope was that the market could shift, that these Passive House buildings would be built, and that ultimately people would start valuing them, as you're saying, for what they are. They're better buildings. They're more like, people would get to a place where they just didn't want to be in a conventional building anymore, because
Yeah.
it was just so inferior to the experience that they'd had. And to set the foundation for that, there was a real big focus on the public education piece, as well as an incentive for making Passive House. So the incentive for making Passive House is what got all the attention from all of us who were eager to see
Yeah.
something like this happen. Um, and the Icebox Challenge, thanks in part to, well, I'm Passive House Canada and Sean St. Amour helped make
Yeah.
get it out there, was important. But there's this piece that I think that probably didn't get enough attention from us, and that was, you got to make sure that you're like doing what you can to change the cultural understanding of buildings and what
Yes.
is possible.
And there's a
Yeah.
lot of work still to be done. It's a real push-pull kind of
Yeah.
mentality. And if you are successful in pulling, then the politicians and the code officials, then it's way easier for them to make the right choices, and to really set a higher standard and a higher bar for construction.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. Well, this has been so great. It's Michael. It's been
Are
really
we
great
done
to
already?
get
Come
to know
on.
you.
Let's keep
I
talking,
want to be
Zach.
mindful of your time, and I feel like you just kind of encapsulated. I think part of probably what was the decision makers and the board of Passive House Canada were excited about when they hired you into this role.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's anything else you would like to share before we wrap up.
No, I believe that we will be successful by having successful conversations one person at a time. And so I am grateful to meet you and to talk with you, and also to be able to borrow the listener's ear for a little bit.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Michael, and good luck getting settled and moving into this role with Passive House Canada. Appreciate it.
And that was Michael Quast, who is the new CEO of Passive House Canada. And there was so much that I found myself relating to during that conversation, Zach. It's there's so many parallels between the kind of things that Michael's thinking about and what we've been thinking about in our part of the world. I guess the underlying theme of all that is, as he described it, expanding the tent and getting the not just the science, but the stories and the emotion and the motivation of Passive House out to a much wider audience beyond those of us, as he puts it, often very smart, passionate people talking to each other. And that is a challenge of how to get some of these concepts, things like air tightness or, what seem to be really expensive windows, across to a much wider audience in a short space of time. But it seems like that's a challenge that Michael's taking on board.
Yeah, absolutely, and clearly an indication as well of where Passive House Canada's board feels like things should move there. And I know I felt the same way in terms of the resonance with where his head is at around Passive House, and I think it does make a lot of sense to bring in somebody with his expertise and communications chops and sensibilities to this really important role for a really important North American Passive House institution. I mean, Passive House
Yeah.
Canada has done so much to move the ball forward in Canada, but with really big ripple effects in the U.S. as well. And so I'm looking forward to seeing them lead the way in communications as the years progress here.
Absolutely. I mean, mentioned leadership. Of course, Michael did bring up the step code, which we've talked about quite a lot on this podcast, and it has been mentioned. Often does get talked about whenever there's a conversation around policy change and moving an existing building code or building regulations closer towards passive house or more energy efficient, whatever it is. And a lot of people have paid attention to that around the world. So there's definitely a precedence there. Just to highlight, I mean, Michael's background is, as he mentioned, is very much in that communication space, and he's done stuff with TV and thinking about how to talk to a wider audience, and that is, I think, something that we really need. Something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about is how to communicate messages in a non-technical way. And in fact, I got the opportunity to do a presentation, a public presentation recently, and my challenge to myself was to make it a presentation about Passive House without talking about Passive House. And it was really just focusing in on things that people would want to experience in their home. So being comfortable throughout the whole house and being able to walk around in a t-shirt but still being able to enjoy the outdoors, not having to wipe down the windows because of the condensation, things like that, and just really actively trying to use language that was just everyday language and not things around Passive House principles that we often slip into whenever we start talking about things that we're really passionate about. So I'm really excited to see where this goes. Obviously, really great things happening in Canada. So yeah, we'll definitely look forward to watching Michael's progress, and of course the rest of the great team at Passive House Canada as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, what have we got going on over at the accelerator, Zach?
Well, very soon at the beginning of September, we're firing back up the Passive House Accelerator Lives on Wednesdays at noon Eastern, but we're not quite there yet. So we will have a Ask Me Anything Friday session in the Reimagine Buildings Collective this week with Christoph Irwin of Positive Energy, and he'll be answering anything around building science and passive house practice. So really looking forward to that. We're also wrapping up the work of 9 different summer labs, Reimagine summer labs within the Reimagine Buildings Collective that are each focusing on a different aspect of building decarbonization, and they will be sharing insight briefs with the collective membership initially, and then we're going to have them share their insights with the Passive House Accelerator live audience in the fall. So that's something to look forward to.
Awesome. Yeah, Christoph he's got a huge amount of knowledge and super nice guy, so that'll be fantastic. And that sounds like a really great summary session if people have missed any of those sessions, just to kind of catch up on.
Yeah, well, the summer, we've had lots of cool Ask Me Anythings, of course, and Reimagine Tuesday interviews by Michael Ingwe of a bunch of leaders in the Passive House and building decarbonization space. And we've had these participatory summer labs going on all summer, and people are really excited about them. And so I'm eager to see the findings that each lab has to share with us.
Absolutely. All right, and of course, in the meantime, we'll be back again next week with another interview. So we'll catch you then. Great to chat, and yeah, talk to you next week on the Passive House Podcast.